What if the most powerful soul in a world of dragons and warriors was never born into it at all? What if the man chosen by a dragon was just a guy who used to deliver pizza? His name, before all of this, doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what he was doing 30 minutes before he stopped being himself. He was on his bicycle, cutting through the intersection of Lennon Street and 8th of March Street. A pizza bag on his back, a timer counting down, a route he had memorized like a song. Then red. Then sound. Not pain, just sound, like someone had slammed a door right next to his ear. And then silence. Not the silence of night, not the hum of a city gone quiet. Absolute silence, the kind that has no bottom. He floated in that void without a body, without time, without breath. Something tugged him, hard and sharp, like a hook driven under the ribs and yanked downward. He opened his eyes and saw a wooden ceiling. Dark beams, dust drifting through a single blade of light, the smell of herbs and something burnt. He tried to lift his hand. His hand rose, but it was not his hand. Long fingers, stiff knuckles, calluses in the wrong places, dirt under the nails. He turned the hand over slowly, like a man inspecting evidence. A low table, a scroll, a sword leaning against the wall, real and worn and scarred. He sat up. The body obeyed, but strangely, like a suit fitted to someone else's measurements. When he reached for the pitcher of water, the hand moved in an arc he had not planned. Someone else's habit, someone else's muscle, someone else's memory. He drank. He stood. His legs held, weight settling onto the heel the way only soldiers and people accustomed to carrying armor stand. He walked to the table and unrolled the scroll. Characters he could not read in a language he had never learned. 30 minutes ago, he was delivering food. Now, he was standing in a stranger's body, in a stranger's room, looking at a stranger's sword. The door opened. A man in his 50s entered, broad-shouldered, straight-backed, a face carved from stone, wearing a dark robe with embroidery that looked expensive and important. The man looked at him for a long time, without blinking. Then he spoke, and the words entered directly into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. The man said he was glad to see him on his feet, that 3 days ago he had lost consciousness during meditation, and no physician could find the cause. That his mother had not slept in 3 nights. That 9 days remained until the selection for the Imperial College, and he must be ready. He matted. The man nodded back and left. 9 days. College. Selection. He looked at the sword against the wall, then at his hands, then back at the sword. In his past life, the sharpest thing he had ever held was a pizza knife. He sat back down and began to breathe, counting to 10, the way he did in traffic when an order was about to go late. By the count of 10, the panic had receded enough to function. He opened his eyes and began surveying the room like a man trying to survive, not like one who had just died. A wardrobe, 3 sets of clothes, a leather bag beneath them. Inside the bag, a map. Mountains to the west, a plain to the east, a river dividing everything in half, a fortress to the north. And beyond the mountain range, a territory shaded in black, with no names, no roads, just an absence where the map refused to explain itself. He stared at that black spot and felt something cold move down his spine. Not fear exactly, something older than fear. He rolled the map away and pulled out a shorter scroll. And somehow, impossibly, he could read some of the characters on it. A list, his name written first. Liang Hai, son of Commander-in-Chief Liang Jian. Candidate for the Imperial Military Academy, category Air Warrior. He read the name 3 times. Liang Hai. That was him now. A courier from the suburbs who never made his last delivery had become the heir to a military dynasty. He set the scroll down and pressed his palms against his face. His hands smelled of herbs, the same herbs he had smelled when he woke up.
A healer had been here, 3 days unconscious.
The body's original owner had not simply fallen asleep. He had died or been killed, and something or someone had dragged a dead courier across the space between worlds to fill the vacancy. He walked to the sword and took the hilt. His fingers closed around it perfectly, without thought, as if they had always known where it was. He drew the blade. The steel slid out silently, caught the light, and his body dropped into a fighting stance on its own. Feet slightly wider than shoulder width, weight on the back leg, left hand behind his back. He had not chosen that stance. The body had. He swung once, and the air whistled, clean and precise. He swung a second time, a third. On the fourth swing, his mind tried to anticipate the next movement, and everything collapsed. He nearly dropped the sword. The body knew the movements, but his mind did not know when the next one would begin. Like getting behind the wheel of a stranger's car, where the gear shift is in the wrong place. He sheathed the sword, sat on the floor, and thought. 9 days. He did not know the world, the rules, the people, or the politics. His body was trained but operating blindly, and a father was waiting for feats of valor. He could have panicked, could have stayed in the corner until someone came to explain. But he had spent years delivering 40 orders a shift through city traffic. He knew what a timer was, what a route was, what survival looked like when the plan fell apart. He stood up, put on simple clothes, opened the door, and went outside. The courtyard was enormous, stone-paved, walled high, with red-leafed trees in the far corner. 3 people were training in the center, moving in synchronized arcs, swords cutting the morning air. He stood in the shadow by the door and watched. Not how a warrior watches, how a delivery man memorizes a new route. Legs, shoulders, breath. The precise moment of inhale before the strike. One trainee noticed him and stopped, then nodded with respect. He nodded back. Not because he deserved it, but because the body he wore was the body of an heir. And for now, nobody knew there was a courier inside it. He was going to use every minute of these 9 days. Before the selection came, before any examiner looked at him and saw the truth, before the mask slipped. The first day was reconnaissance. He walked every courtyard of the Liang estate, touching nothing unnecessarily, memorizing everything. The outer wall, 4 men tall, beyond it, the city. 3 courtyards inside, entrance, living quarters, training ground. Banners with the family crest, a golden lion on a black field. Weapon racks in the training yard. Swords, spears, halberds, bows, all of them scarred from thousands of blows. He touched each weapon and waited to feel the body respond. The sword answered immediately. The spear was slower. The halberd not at all. The bow he could not pull. The body simply could not find its position. The former owner had trained with a sword and spear. Everything else was secondary. He filed that information away. By evening, he had also counted 12 servants, including one called Mistress May, a quiet woman with quick eyes who watched him at dinner as if she had noticed something on his face she could not yet name. He ate in silence and discovered that the body held chopsticks on its own. Small mercy. His father spoke during dinner, mentioning a visit from Master Gu Wen, described as the best martial mentor in the province, whose assessment would determine everything at the trials. The name dropped into his mind like a stone into water. A master who specialized in body and chi, coming to evaluate him. If that man could see even half of what was wrong, he would be over in 5 seconds. That night, he could not sleep. He went out to the courtyard under a bright moon, took the sword, and began to move without thinking. He let the body lead completely. 8 movements, a sequence that repeated. Overhead strike, step to the side, turn, low strike, block. He ran through it 10 times. On the 11th, He tried to change a single step. The body stumbled like a car whose steering wheel was jerked sideways at full speed. He almost fell. The lesson was immediate and painful. Muscle memory only works when he does not interfere. The moment his mind tries to control, everything breaks. During the master's test, he must not think. He must become a passenger in his own body and trust the driver completely. For a man who had controlled every movement because 40 deliveries a shift depended on it, that was harder than any sword form. He trained until dawn. 50 repetitions of the sequence. By morning, his body ached differently, not like after an accident, like after a real workout.
Master Gu Wen arrived the next day around noon.
Short, lean, wiry, gray-bearded, with eyes that moved faster than anyone he had ever seen. The master walked in, said nothing by way of greeting, and told him to pick up the sword. He did, and he let go. Did not think, did not plan, simply allowed the muscles to remember what they knew. The sequence flowed out clean, 8 movements without hesitation. The master watched.
Told him to repeat it faster.
He did. Then, without warning, the master pulled a short stick from behind his back and struck, and everything came apart. His body started to dodge sideways, but he panicked and jerked backward instead. 2 commands in the same body at the same time, and the body fell. He hit the ground in front of the master, in front of his father, who had been watching silently from the wall. 3 seconds of absolute silence. The master looked down, then at the father, then back. He said the body was fine, reflexes intact, but something was interfering from within. Something conflicting with the movement, like chi stagnation after a serious illness.
The father asked if it could be corrected in the remaining days.
The master said it could, but it would take work, every day from morning to night, and he would come until the trials.
Father helped him to his feet without a word and left.
He stood alone in the dusty courtyard with his heart pounding. The master had not seen through him. He had read the chaos as a medical condition, chi stagnation, a real thing in this world. Luck. But luck does not stay. That night, his mother came and knocked softly and brought tea.
She sat beside him in silence for a while, then said he had changed.
That before there had been a flame in his eyes, and now there was something else, something quiet and watchful. He told her that illness changes people. She studied him for a long time, then smiled and said that change could be for the better. After she left, he sat with his tea and understood that the mother of this body was sharper than she appeared, and that sooner or later she would understand what had happened to her son. The next 5 days were a single long streak of sweat and pain. Master Gu Wen came every morning and drove him through swords, spears, running, stretching, breathing work. The master called it restoring the chi flow. He called it survival. Every session taught him the same thing in a different way. Do not interfere. Do not think. Do not try to steer. Let the body do what it knows. By the 3rd day, the basic sequence ran without a single misstep. By the 5th, the master struck without warning, and the body dodged cleanly while he stayed out of the way. The master smiled for the first time in all those days. He said the stagnation was lifted.
He would be ready for the trials.
He nodded and did not say what he knew. That dodging a stick was one thing, and what awaited at the trials was something else entirely. He had seen the other candidates training through the estate walls. The son of a governor, the daughter of a weapons master, the nephew of a southern general. They moved like people born with a sword already in their hands. They did not struggle with their own bodies. They were their bodies.
He was a tenant, a temporary resident in a house whose furniture he was not allowed to rearrange.
On the evening of the 5th day, he climbed onto the roof of his room and looked at the sky. Different stars, not a single familiar constellation. A different world. And he was alone in it, without instructions, without a map, without a rewind button.
but with a sword and with 4 days left.
The 6th day brought something he had been expecting without knowing it. Uncle Yangshu arrived at the estate.
Younger brother of the commander-in-chief, accompanied by 4 bodyguards and 2 servants with travel trunks.
Dark blue robe, silver embroidery, and a smile so wide and confident and empty, it reminded him of middle managers at corporate events.
He watched from his room as the uncle embraced the father, announcing he had come to support his nephew before the big day.
The courier instinct woke up the moment he saw Liang Shu toward his father.
The same instinct that told him when a customer would not tip before the door even opened.
The uncle's eyes were pointed toward the exit while his body faced inward.
A man already ready to leave or to run.
At dinner, Liang Shu spoke warmly about the capital, the upcoming imperial inspection, a record number of applicants this year, and a petition from the Black Crane clan to expand trade routes through the Northern Pass.
The father frowned at the mention of the Black Crane and said the Northern Pass was military territory.
The uncle replied softly that times change, that trade brings gold, and gold strengthens armies.
The father said nothing. He sat and watched and filed everything away.
Then the uncle turned to him and produced a small pouch.
Inside, a jade amulet on a cord, green with gold veins, beautiful, obtained from an artifact master in the capital specifically for his nephew. He took it, and the moment his fingers touched the stone, he felt something that was not warmth and not cold.
Something third, like static electricity, but inside, under the skin, in the bones.
It lasted a fraction of a second and then was gone.
He thanked his uncle, put the amulet in his pocket.
That night, he placed it on the table and looked at it.
The stone appeared ordinary, beautiful, unremarkable.
But that feeling, that creeping sensation when he had touched it. He wrapped the amulet in cloth and pushed it to the back of the cabinet drawer.
He would not wear it. He would not mention it to anyone.
On the morning of the 7th day, Master Gu Wen arrived earlier than usual with a serious face.
Today, he said, they would work not with weapons, but with qi. Qi was the realm he understood least.
With a sword, his body moved on its own, but qi was internal, a flow of energy that had not existed in his previous life at all. The master told him to sit, close his eyes, breathe, direct attention inward to the center of the abdomen. He sat, he breathed, he focused.
Darkness, silence, nothing.
20 minutes of nothing. Then the master placed one hand on his back, and he felt it.
Like someone switching on a light in a dark room.
Something warm and slow deep inside his body, like a river running very far underground.
He could not control it, could not direct it, but for one moment he could feel it.
The master removed his hand, and the light went out.
He said the qi channels were intact, the flow was present and strong, but that he was learning to feel it all over again, like a child relearning to walk after a long illness.
The description was accurate in ways the master did not know.
There would be a mandatory qi demonstration at the trials, the master explained. Not combat, just proof that the candidate could direct qi into a hand or a weapon.
Basic level. Trivial for anyone trained since childhood.
Impossible for someone who had learned that qi existed 3 days ago.
For the next 2 days, he trained both body and qi, sword and spear in the morning, breathing exercises in the afternoon, running until his legs failed in the evening, meditation at night.
He sat in the dark trying to find that river inside, without the master's hand to guide him. It was like looking for a black cat in a black room. But on the second night, for 1 second, he found it. Warmth in his stomach, sliding down to his feet, and gone. 1 second of contact.
Not enough, but a start.
Through all of this, Liang Shu remained at the estate.
Every day the uncle appeared in different places, chatting with guards, wandering the courtyards, watching the training sessions. Not like a concerned relative, like someone conducting an evaluation. On the 8th day, he woke in the middle of the night to cold. Not a chill, genuine cold, as if a winter window had been opened in a sealed room.
The wardrobe in the far corner was glowing, a faint greenish light from the bottom drawer.
He walked over, opened the drawer.
The amulet, the cloth he had wrapped it in, had darkened, scorched from inside.
The jade was cold, unnaturally cold, and it was pulsing, faintly, distinctly, like a heartbeat.
He did not touch it. He closed the drawer and walked back to the bed. He sat and thought.
His uncle had brought him an artifact that glowed at night and scorched fabric.
This was not a gift.
It was a tool.
He did not know enough about this world to know exactly what the amulet did, but he had spent years reading people at their doors, and he knew one thing.
Liang Shu was running a game, and the nephew was a piece on the board. On the morning of the 9th day, the final day before the trials, Master Gu Wen stood in the center of the courtyard for a full simulation.
3 stages: physical, weapons, qi. Physical and weapons both went cleanly, his body working without interference. The master's stick attacks dodged and countered with precision.
Then the qi demonstration.
He took the sword, closed his eyes, searched for the river.
1 second.
2, 5, nothing. His father was watching from the wall.
His uncle was watching from slightly farther back. 15 seconds of silence and sweat, and the sword showing nothing.
And then he stopped searching.
He exhaled and released everything, just as he had done with the sword sequences on those sleepless nights.
Let go of control, not just over his muscles, but over everything inside. The river flared, not gradually, all at once, surging from his stomach to his chest, to his hands, to the blade.
The sword glowed, dim, barely a shimmer, but it glowed.
Master Gu Wen exhaled. The father's eyes changed without his face moving. The uncle smiled, that same empty shopfront smile.
The glow faded, but it had been there.
The master said it would be enough for tomorrow. He was admitted to the trials.
The day of the trials began with cold rain and a carriage ride that lasted until nightfall, the short path through the mountains that brought them to the capital before dawn.
The city opened around a turn like a blow to the face. Stone walls rising so high, their tops dissolved into rain clouds.
Gates the height of a 5-story building.
Guards in armor with spears longer than any person he had ever seen. Imperial banners, golden dragon on red, snapping in the wet wind above the walls.
Inside, the streets were a living thing. Vendors and soldiers and porters and children and animals he could not identify. Something between a horse and a lizard, gray with scales on its legs, carrying armored riders.
He looked at all of it and kept his face still. Liang Hai had been to the capital before, and he had not, and that was a gap he could not afford to show.
They stopped at a Lyon guest house on the edge of the city.
Father said the trials began at dawn, and he should rest. He did not argue, went upstairs, closed his eyes, and did not sleep. He ran through everything he knew. 3 stages: physical, weapons, qi. The first 2 he could pass if he stayed out of his own body's way. The third was a lottery.
He had lit the blade exactly once.
He needed it to happen once more, and he had no idea if it would.
In the evening, he stepped into the courtyard for air and saw Liang Shu by the fence.
His uncle was speaking in a low voice to someone on the other side, a figure in dark clothing with a hood, face invisible. Something passed over the fence, a small package, and the hooded figure disappeared into the alley.
Liang Shu turned and saw him. For one moment, something sharp crossed the uncle's face before the smile returned.
Medicinal herbs, the uncle explained, arranged in advance so his nephew would be in peak condition.
He thanked him and returned to his room.
Medicinal herbs.
Over a fence at night.
To a hooded stranger.
He sat on the bed and built the picture from the pieces he had collected.
The pulsing amulet, the secret meetings, the conversation about the black crane at dinner.
The fact that the original Liang Hai had lost consciousness for 3 days with no medical explanation.
He could not accuse his uncle. Not yet. Not without proof. Not before the trials.
But he could be careful.
Morning came faster than he wanted.
He dressed, light shoulder and chest armor, sword at his belt, and walked out to find his father waiting.
The father looked at him and said one sentence.
The Liang do not retreat.
Not a demand, not a speech, just a fact, stated plainly.
And nodded.
They walked to the Imperial College.
The college stood on a hill at the center of the capital. White walls, black roofs, 5 towers.
And above the tallest tower, something enormous circled in slow, patient loops.
Dark blue, vast, with wings that blocked the sun when they passed between him and the sky.
A dragon. A real one.
Not a painting, not a banner, not a story.
It called out from somewhere overhead, low and deep, a sound that traveled through the stone beneath his feet and up through his bones.
His mouth opened slightly.
He could not help it. In that moment, for the first time since waking up in this body, he truly understood where he was.
Not a game.
Not a dream.
A world where dragons fly over examination grounds.
The square before the college held roughly 100 candidates, all young, all armed, all attended by family and servants, banners of different clans snapping in the rain.
He recognized a few crests from the map he had stayed.
The Liang lion, the sun eagle, the fan snake, and then a black crane on a white field.
A candidate from the Black Crane clan stood apart from the crowd, tall and lean with long black hair tied back, his face wearing no expression at all, like a mask someone had forgotten to remove.
He stood alone, without guards or family, just waiting.
The college gates opened, and an old man in white robes emerged with a long white beard and a staff of dark wood, and the square went completely silent.
Rector Zhao Lin announced that 30 spots were available for 123 candidates.
3 stages, and then a 4th stage for those who passed all 3.
A meeting with the dragon. The square buzzed with noise.
He stood and did the arithmetic.
1 spot for every 4 people. And a 4th stage that nobody had warned anyone about.
Stage 1 began an hour later, a physical obstacle course on the college grounds.
The top 60 would advance, the rest eliminated.
Half gone in the very first hour.
He gripped his sword hilt, not from anger, from tension, and forced himself to release the grip and breathe.
His father placed a hand on his shoulder before he walked through the gate.
Heavy, warm, and then gone.
The course was enormous, set on a field the size of a stadium, soaked from the rain.
Walls, ditches, suspension bridges, spinning logs over mud pits, rope nets, stone pillars.
Everything slippery, everything punishing.
He looked at it the way he looked at a delivery route with 3 road closures and 1 broken traffic light.
Find the bottlenecks, identify where to cut corners, locate the points that determine the speed of the entire run.
123 candidates surged forward when the signal came.
He started at moderate pace and let the crowd stretch.
The 3-meter stone wall. His body cleared it without being asked.
The 4-meter water ditch, he jumped, nearly slipped on the far edge, held, ran on.
The spinning logs over the mud pit stopped him for 1 second.
4 logs, distances between them varying, the third thicker than the others and spinning more slowly.
3 candidates ahead of him had already fallen into the mud. He jumped past the first log to the third directly, a long, risky arc, landed in the center where the rotation was slowest, 1 step to the 4th, and down to solid ground clean. Someone behind him whistled.
He ran on.
20 obstacles, each one a problem to route it around rather than faced head-on.
Where others spent energy on brute force, he saved it through angles. He crossed the finish line and looked at the scoreboard.
23rd place out of 123.
Top third.
Good enough.
He bent over with his hands on his knees, rain running down his face, and watched others finish around him.
Some fell in the mud and did not get back up.
Some walked back toward the gate, the eliminated.
He straightened and looked at the top 3 names on the board. First place, Fanza of the Fan Clan, a powerfully built young man who had crossed the entire course without appearing to breathe hard. Second, Sun Mei of the Sun Clan, short with sharp eyes that moved like they were tracking several things simultaneously. Third, Wei Jing of the Black Crane Clan, that same young man with the mask face, who had moved through the obstacles like a shadow with no wasted motion.
He looked at those 3 and understood clearly. 23rd was survival, not victory.
The top 30 who would earn a spot was still far ahead.
Stage 2 began the same day without rest.
60 candidates on the training field, 12 college instructors in white armor waiting for them.
Rector Zhao Lin announced the rules.
Each candidate chooses a weapon and duels an instructor for assessment.
Not a fight to win, a demonstration of technique scored 1 to 10.
Below 6, eliminated.
He watched the top candidates go first.
Fanza chose a 2-handed sword and spent 40 seconds launching 12 attacks, each one forcing the instructor back a step, scored 10 out of 10 without breaking expression. Sun Mei chose paired short blades, moved as if they were extensions of her fingers, caused the instructor to miss 2 blocks out of 5, scored 9. Wei Jing chose the spear and worked it like a whip, his strikes transmitting enough force through each blocked movement that the instructor shook his hand afterward, scored 9.
He chose his one-handed sword, the same type he had trained with under the master, and when his turn came, he walked out to the instructor and let go.
The body ran through the first combination cleanly, 8 movements, the instructor blocking everything but giving ground.
The second combination ran clean as well.
Then the instructor sped up. A fast attack, then another, then a third.
On the third, the body ran out of responses. 3 combinations in 9 days of training. The original owner knew dozens, but he only had 3, and all 3 were spent. The 4th attack came, and instead of retreating or blocking, he stepped forward into it.
His mind was at that intersection, Lenin Street and 8th of March, on a bicycle between trucks, where the only way to survive is not to brake, but to accelerate.
He stepped inside the instructor's range, where a longsword is suddenly useless, where only a knife or a hilt or a forehead works.
The instructor did not expect it.
Froze for a split second.
He raised the hilt of his sword and drove it into the instructor's chest.
The arena went silent.
The instructor straightened, looked at him, and smiled. He said the technique was rough. The basic combinations sat out of 4, but closing the distance under attack was either genius or madness.
In either case, it deserved respect.
7 out of 10. He walked back to his spot with his legs shaking from adrenaline, not fatigue. 7. The passing score was 6. He had passed because of an intersection he would never see again, and 40 delivery shifts that taught him not to stop when things go wrong.
12 candidates failed the weapon stage.
48 remained for 30 spots.
Stage 3 began the next morning in a vast stone hall inside the college's main building. Stone circles on the floor, 1 per candidate, with a carved stele at the center of each. Place your hand on the stele, direct chi into it, watch the color. Blue was minimum passing.
Green was average. Gold was highest.
Red meant unstable flow. Black meant nothing, no chi at all. And the door.
1 attempt, 1 touch.
He watched the others go first. Fanza, gold, so bright and pure. The mentors exchanged glances without a word. Sun Mei, green, steady as breathing. Wei Jing, green, but threaded with dark streaks that made one of the mentors write something down. Blue after blue after blue, 1 red, that candidate turning pale and led away. His turn. He walked up, placed his palm on the warm stone, closed his eyes.
Do not search.
Do not reach.
Let go. The same way he let go with the sword. The same way he let go on the obstacle course.
1 second.
2, 3.
The silence in the hall grew heavier.
5 seconds, 6, and nothing.
And then, behind his closed eyes, he thought of the crossroads, of the last moment in the other life, of the sound of impact, of the emptiness, of something pulling him downward through the dark between worlds, of how he had fallen here, carrying the cold.
Deep inside his body, something stirred.
Not the warm river.
Something colder, heavier, deeper.
A piece of the void between worlds that had lodged inside him when he crossed over.
The steely flashed.
Blue. Dim and uneven, but unmistakably blue.
He opened his eyes. The mentor nodded and recorded the result.
He stepped back.
Blue.
Minimum passing score. The third time he had stepped over the line by half a step.
When all 48 candidates had finished, 5 showed black, 3 showed red, 40 remained for 30 spots.
He sat on a bench by the wall and waited.
He did the math on his combined score. Obstacle course in the top quarter, weapons in the middle, chi at the floor.
Somewhere between 25th and 30th if the ranking held.
An hour later, the rector read the names.
Fonza, 1st.
Sun Mei, 4th.
Wei Jing, 5th. Names came one after another. 20, 25, 27, 28, 29.
The 30th name.
Lian Hai. He closed his eyes, opened them.
Last on the list, the minimum score, passed.
The candidate who finished 31st stood next to him, an 18-year-old with a broad face and red-rimmed eyes, failed by 1 position.
He looked at the boy and looked away.
He had nothing to say.
30 candidates remained, and ahead of them was the 4th stage.
The dragon.
That night in the guest house, he did not sleep. He sat by the window and looked at the dark sky, where the dragon circled without a sound. Or maybe did not circle at all, the darkness too thick to know.
The rector had said only that the dragon decides.
Not a test of strength, not a test of skill, something else entirely.
You cannot prepare for an interview where the employer is evaluating not your skills, but your smell.
Either it accepts you, or it does not. In the morning, he woke to a knock and found his father waiting downstairs alone. Liang Shu absent on urgent business in the district. The uncle who had come to support him gone on the exact day his nephew would meet a dragon.
He noted it and said nothing.
They walked to the college in silence.
30 candidates stood waiting, every one of them quiet, every one of them nervous.
Fanza stood separate from the others with his arms crossed, looking at the tower. Sun Mei was rotating her wrists slowly, methodically.
Wei Jing stood motionless as stone. The gates opened and instructors led them through the college grounds, past the main building, past the barracks, past the library, to the foot of the tallest tower.
Behind the tower, a round, open arena 100 meters in diameter, the stone floor carved with symbols he could not read.
Stands around the circumference, filled with instructors and officers in armor, and figures in rich clothing he did not recognize.
And in a separate box at the top of the stands, a young man in his 30s in golden robes with a small crown, black with a single ruby at its center.
Next to him, 2 advisors in white.
Rector Zhao Lin bowed to the box.
All the candidates bowed. He bowed a half second after the others because the body knew how, but he had not recognized who.
The Emperor.
He memorized the face, calm, attentive, viewing the arena as a chessboard. The rector announced the rules. 1 candidate at a time enters the arena. The dragon descends.
The candidate stands still.
Does not move, does not attack, does not run. The dragon approaches and looks and decides. If the dragon turns away,
the candidate has failed. If the dragon bows its head, the candidate is accepted as a potential writer. If the dragon roars, the candidate is led away immediately.
Fanza went first, striding into the arena with the same confidence he brought to everything.
He stood in the center, and the sound came, low, deep, vibrating the ground and the air and the stones of the stands.
The dragon descended from behind the tower. Huge, larger than it had seemed from the square, wings spanning 30 meters, scales the color of a stormy sky, eyes like 2 yellow lanterns burning in a dark room.
It landed at the edge of the arena, the ground shaking, and walked slowly toward the center, each step like a hammer striking stone. It stopped before Fanza and tilted its head and looked. Fanza stood without moving, without breathing, for 20 seconds. The dragon raised its head, turned, and walked away. No bow, no roar. Just gone. Fanza stood alone in the arena, his face unchanged, his fists closed.
First in the rankings, 10 out of 10 for weapons, golden chi, and the dragon had simply walked away from him. The arena was absolutely silent.
He stood among the waiting candidates and understood something without being able to name it yet.
The dragon did not care about rankings.
Sun Mei went second, and the dragon looked at her for 30 seconds while she returned its gaze directly into the yellow flame of those enormous pupils.
The dragon tilted its head 3 centimeters, then turned and left.
The mentors exchanged glances. The rector nodded.
Accepted. Her hands were trembling when she returned, though her face was still.
Wei Jing went fifth.
The dragon stopped farther away than it had with any other candidate and stood for 5 seconds before turning and walking away, without bowing, without growling.
Wei Jing returned wearing exactly the same expression he had arrived with.
The fourth candidate was led away roaring after the dragon, the one who triggered a sound like thunder and stone breaking.
The process continued, candidate after candidate, the dragon accepting 4 of the first 15, turning away from 11, roaring at 1.
By the 29th candidate, 7 had been accepted.
His name was last. Liang Hai, lowest score on the list, minimum across all 3 stages.
He walked into the arena. The stone beneath his feet was warm.
He stood in the center with his feet at shoulder width and his arms at his sides, and did not try to appear strong or calm.
There was no point in admitting.
The dragon descended closer than it had for any other candidate. It landed 5 meters away, and the ground shook so hard he nearly fell.
He steadied himself and looked up.
Yellow eyes, each one the size of his head, vertical black pupils, deep as holes in the world.
He looked into those eyes and saw curiosity. Not anger, not indifference, curiosity.
The dragon stepped forward.
3 meters, 2, 1, and he felt the heat pouring off those scales, along with a smell like hot metal and ozone after a thunderstorm. The dragon bent its head and sniffed him. His heart was loud enough to hear in his own ears. The dragon sniffed again, then jerked its head back sharply as if something had burned it, taking a step away.
The arena went so still he could hear rain on the stones outside.
The dragon stood and stared.
Did not leave, did not turn, did not roar.
30 seconds, a minute, nothing moving anywhere.
And inside him, the cold lake stirred without his asking. The same cold that had lit the stele. The same piece of void he had carried here from between worlds. He could see in the dragon's eyes the moment it recognized that cold.
The yellow pupils expanded.
The dragon took another step back, stopped,
and then, slowly, unmistakably, all the way to the ground, its head descended. Not 3 centimeters, as with Sun Mei. Its nose touched the stone. The stands erupted in voices, dozens of them, and he heard none of the words. He stood looking at the dragon, lying with its nose against the floor of the arena, and did not understand what it meant. The emperor in the upper box leaned forward. The dragon raised its head, held his gaze one last time, and rose silently into the sky.
The rector announced that 8 candidates had been accepted into the Imperial Military College as potential writers.
8 names, and his was the last. But after what had just happened in the arena, it did not sound the same as it had on the ranked list.
His father was standing exactly where he had stood that morning. His face had not changed, but his eyes were wet.
He placed his hand on his son's shoulder and said nothing.
Heavy,
Not like a father who hopes.
like a father who has seen.
What followed was not a celebration.
It was a sledgehammer.
College life began at dawn with running, theory until noon, weapons practice after lunch, meditation before lights out, every day without exception.
Theory covered the history of the Blacklands Wars, battlefield tactics, command structures, the classification of creatures that came from beyond the ridge. Practice meant swords and spears and formation combat, and one-on-one duels and group exercises against opponents who had trained since they could walk.
He was drowning, and he found the only plank that kept him afloat.
Tactics. Tactical schemes resembled routing problems. Analyzing an enemy's weak points resembled delivery optimization, and those parallels worked in ways that surprised the instructors. When Master Dwan posed the problem of holding a gorge with 100 defenders against 500 attackers, the other 7 proposed walls of shields and archer flanks and retreats to narrow passes.
He proposed letting the first wave through and destroying the supply train. Without resupply, 500 warriors become 500 starving men in 2 days.
The instructor went quiet, looked at him, then said it was a raiding tactic from the steppe clans, considered dishonorable, and that it worked. He gave him the highest grade.
Fanza, who had not passed the dragon trial and had been admitted as an infantry commander rather than a rider, turned his head from 2 seats away and looked at him the way you look at a puzzle you intend to solve.
In weapons practice, it was different. 3 combinations in a world where everyone else knew dozens. Muscle memory on defense and nothing reliable on offense.
In the first sparring match, a broad, powerful cadet named Chen Bao with a training axe hit him across the ribs on the 7th blow, and he fell and stared at the sky while his ribs burned.
Chen Bao helped him up and told him that for the heir of a great family, he dodged beautifully, but attacked as if he were afraid of his own sword.
He did not answer, because Chen Bao was right.
That evening in his small barracks room, he made a decision.
3 combinations were not enough.
Muscle memory helped on defense, but left him empty on offense.
But once, during the trials, stepping into an instructor's strike had worked.
Step forward instead of back.
Close range, where a long weapon becomes a problem rather than an advantage.
He took a 30-centimeter training knife from the closet and began to move in the middle of the room.
Step in, turn, lunge, low strike.
His body knew none of these movements.
No muscle memory to fall back on. These were entirely his. Clumsy, slow, but his.
He trained until midnight, and in the morning, everything hurt, but his mind was clearer than it had been since he arrived in this world.
Master Yun, a specialist in anomalous energies brought in by the Qi instructor Li Feng, was the first to understand what was truly inside him.
In a sealed underground chamber, the old man with white beard and eyes that appeared blind but saw everything sat across from him in silence for 20 minutes before opening his eyes with a fear in them that was quiet and deep.
He said the energy inside Liang Hai was not simply an anomaly.
It was fractal essence, concentrated void energy from the space between worlds, the same raw material from which the Blacklands were born, but in its purest form.
Like a diamond before it became coal.
Li Feng turned pale and asked how that was possible.
Master Yun said that to absorb rift essence, one must pass through the rift, and surviving a rift crossing was impossible.
He sat in his chair and remained silent.
Because he had passed through the rift. Not surviving. Dying.
The void did not kill him because he was already dead when he crossed.
a dead soul slipping through the dark between worlds, carrying a piece of that dark back with it.
Master Young continued.
The creatures of the Black Lands feared pure rift essence because they were made from the distorted version, the corrupted and rotten form.
Pure essence was to them what fire is to insects.
And dragons, the master said, were the only beings in this world capable of sensing it.
Because dragons were themselves partly creatures of the rift, ancient ones who had come from beyond the mountain range thousands of years ago when the Black Lands were not yet black.
That was why the dragon bowed. Not before Liang Hai, the Kakat.
Before what was inside him. The dragon had recognized something ancient and forgotten and paid it the only reverence it knew.
Master Yun said they must tell no one. Information about rift essence in a living cadet would bring 3 kinds of danger: those who would use him as a weapon, those who would destroy him as a threat, and those who would study him as a specimen.
He would hold private sessions with them once a week.
They would study what was inside him, and they would teach him to control it.
The training sessions were unlike anything else.
Master Yun taught him not to use the essence, but to feel it, to distinguish its texture from the qi flowing in the channels above it.
The essence reacted to his emotions, anger making the black lake churn, fear deepening and cooling it, calmness smoothing the surface to glass.
If he lost control of his emotions while the essence was active, it could spill, and everyone within 10 meters would experience what the creatures of the Black Lands feel when they encounter pure rift energy.
Primitive, bone-deep terror.
He learned to count, to breathe, to keep the lake still.
Then, one session, Master Yun asked him to draw a single drop of essence from the lake and direct it to his fingertip, then touch the stone floor.
The drop moved slowly through channels designed for qi, thick and heavy like mercury in pipes built for water.
He touched the granite.
A crack appeared, palm length, running clean through 20 centimeters of stone.
Master Yun looked at the crack and then sat down and was quiet for a long time.
He said that a single drop splits granite, that the lake held millions of such drops, and that if even 1/10 of what lived inside him could ever be used, no creature from the Black Lands would come within 100 meters of him standing.
Then he said, more quietly, that this was precisely why no one could ever know.
A power that cannot be stopped frightens not only enemies, it frightens friends, and it frightens emperors.
He remembered the young face in golden robes leaning forward in the upper stands, viewing the arena as a chessboard.
Silence, secrecy, and control became the 3 words he lived by.
Meanwhile, the threat from within the college had not disappeared.
Liang Shu returned to the capital and began appearing on visiting days, bringing books and ointments and questions dressed as concern.
But a servant with a mole on his left cheek moved through the barracks with access to every room, and packages passed over the outer wall by night. He proved the surveillance with a sheet of paper left at a precise angle on his table that had moved 2 fingers to the left when he returned from class.
With Wei Jing, who revealed himself as the one who had slid the warning note under his door, they built a careful trap.
Wei Jing, who had grown up inside the Black Crane clan and watched his mother killed for trying to leave it, knew how the clan operated, through bribes and servants and people who looked unremarkable and saw everything.
He went to Li Feng with only the facts: a servant accepting packages at the wall, secret handoffs, no accusations, no names.
2 days later, the servant was detained, the vial found in his pocket. Master Yun confirmed it as a qi-suppressing poison, slow-acting, invisible, capable of eliminating a cadet's energy flow in 2 weeks.
The same poison, Wei Jing said, that had been used 3 months ago on the original Liang Hai, the young man whose body he now wore, whose soul had been burned out of him from the inside.
He stood against the barracks wall with that cold knowledge and felt the Black Lake rise on its own before he breathed it back down.
His uncle had not just been monitoring him.
His uncle had killed the person who used to live here.
The channel inside the college was cut, the servant gone, the poison seized.
But the chain broke one link too early, and Liang Shu's name never appeared.
Then the night came when the amulet activated on its own.
He woke to air so thick he could not breathe, and found the jade stone pouring black flame from its cracks, scorching the floor beneath it, eating through cloth in 3 seconds.
Someone in the city had sent an energy pulse, a remote trigger, and the artifact his uncle had given him months ago had woken to do what it was built to do.
Destroy the chi channels of a sleeping target from the inside.
He crouched over the black lake, scooped with both hands, and drove a handful of essence down through his legs into the stone floor.
Cold fractures raced toward the amulet, pure void against corrupted darkness, and the jade split with a sound like shattering glass.
The black flame vanished.
Sun Mei arrived in the doorway 30 seconds later with a sword in her hand and bare feet, and looked at the scorched room and the cracked stone and the boy standing in the wreckage, and now she knew what he was carrying, and the game had changed.
He had survived every trap his uncle set, passed every trial by half a step, and carried inside him a power ancient enough to make a dragon bow its head to the ground, and the only question left was whether he would be able to use all of it before the people hunting him learned what they were truly hunting.